Welcome, Non-Lethe. Welcome, Tate. You guys are free to come up and speak if you'd like and hang out. We'll wait a couple of minutes here to get started. This is nothing more than just a hang in a casual AMA. So feel free to come on up and speak if you'd like and hang out with us. Yeah, that was some big news this morning. There was quite a lot of detail there. Looks like the code isn't ready, but
Right. Code's not
interesting
ready.
the direction they're going and planning.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more, but it really feels like some of their broad direction is similar to what we've been talking about here, where it's like
Right.
they see, you know, an AMM as like a liquidity layer on top of Ethereum, and it's like, huh, who else has
Right.
been talking about, some sort of layer on top of Ethereum or trying to build everything on an AMM?
Right. Right. Exactly. Just as we talked about, we think that model is going to be it going forward. And sure enough, you see Uniswap Labs coming out and kind of parroting and saying the same thing. So that's good. That means that
Yeah.
this is the way.
Oh yeah, and they said a lot of good things there. But yeah, Uniswap V4 is announced, but it's not production ready. There's no code base isn't finalized, and actually one of the most interesting bits is they are relying some of what they're doing here on Ethereum opcodes that aren't included until the next hard fork, or I think proposed
Interesting. And
for the
that's
next
that's
hard
like
fork.
December, right? December or
I
November?
don't even know when that's going to be. So this is yeah, this isn't even like, oh, it's a rough draft. They could publish it now and it would work. No, they're relying on opcodes that don't exist
Right.
on the EVM yet,
Right.
which is
Interesting.
it's interesting. It's a big jump to see if they're gonna they're putting a lot of faith in getting this published.
Yeah.
And I had seen some
Right.
controversy on this opcode earlier because what it does is it lets you do computations and virtually store data without having to
Right.
write data, which
Right.
it kind of makes sense if you think of it as like a computer system. You're not writing everything to and
Mm-hmm.
from the hard disk. You can write things to and from RAM that get forgotten, easily. The
Right.
rapid memory and stuff. So it kind of makes sense. But on the other hand, it's
Right.
also like, okay, so we're just going to expect all the validators who are actually running this to do additional computation without rewards for doing additional computation. Like
Right.
how far can you
Right.
take that?
Is that sustainable? Right.
That's the thing.
Agreed.
Does this open a new avenue for attack where you'll have a really complicated call that takes a
Right.
lot of these reads and writes. It takes a lot of data. You have to do a lot of things, but then nothing gets written, so it's very, very cheap on gas. Is that a form of attack? Could you use that to attack? I
Right.
don't know.
It seems like it
It is going to make
at a basic level.
it does make things cheaper on a gas level, but
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's real
Yeah.
interesting some of the directions they're going with it. But
As we always say, gas is security.
hmm
I do like the timing of the announcement. Let me say that though. Everybody is awash in FUD and fear and everything that's going on from SEC last week, everything like that. And then boom, here comes Uniswap Labs to kind of just redirect the conversation to look forward. Hey, we're building, and this is what's coming,
this
and
is yep.
I like that.
This is saying, hey,
Remind everybody what's being built.
we're here to build throughout this. Yeah, and that's what they're
Right.
doing. So very based on their part.
Yep.
And things are very open
Yep.
source. I see it. Their stuff's all on GitHub there, and they're basically
Yep.
saying, "Hey, come help contribute to this." This is
Right.
more of an open call. They're seeing Uniswap as this more open form for a liquidity layer
Right.
that
Yep.
more people contribute to. Sort of like ETH is the base layer. Then they're saying, "Hey, here's a liquidity layer on it." So
Right. And they got this, these new kind of code, inputs like hooks is what they're calling them,
Hooks,
I think.
yeah,
Yeah, which I thought was kind of interesting and kind of like some new functionality, maybe like checks with like limit orders and things like that,
yeah,
where, it's more, the code is more, the hooks code is more like dynamic, and maybe not as static as some of the logic that was in the way that the Dex operates and things like that. So they can get a little more granular with the control, um, and what they're trying to do. So I thought that was a little interesting. I was reading a Bankless summary of it earlier this morning, and they were talking about that.
yeah. They basically give places where you can interrupt the traditional swap. So they basically said, okay, you know how you normally do a swap on a DEX? Well, there's a bunch of places during that swap that you might want to do something, interesting or unique or different. So we're going to basically place these, potential holds, and that's what they're calling hooks, potential places where, we'll interrupt that traditional swap, do some other stuff, and then continue on with the rest of the swap. And that's
Right,
that's where you get to insert, arbitrary custom things.
right,
But yeah,
right.
this it and
Interesting.
it's interesting, and it's interesting the direction they're going with this, and I think it's distinct and different enough from the bazaar. So a lot of what they talked about during this is, gas optimizations. They're really, really trying to push that through these, different op codes, through these single contract liquidity pool instead of new pools being
Right,
new contracts, one contract that just gets updated uh, throughout. So there's, they're very focused on, maintaining their spot at being the number one DEX on Ethereum, the number one DEX for,
right,
big swaps of Ethereum, being very good for concentrated liquidity, which is sticking around.
right,
They're not
right.
ditching concentrated liquidity. That's here to stay, it seems. But
Hmm.
we've talked about it a little
And that was
before.
introduced in V3,
Yep,
right?
that was the big
Concentrated liquidity.
V3. That was the, yeah, sort of
Right.
the quantum leap as they
Yeah.
talked about. But
And talking about market share, I mean, they got what? Like they've got almost 60 or 65% of the Dex market share, don't they?
yeah,
Something close to that.
They dominate on L1. On the
Yeah.
Ethereum base layer, no one really comes close to Uniswap. Where it is a
Right.
lot tighter is over on L2s. Um,
Yep.
I know at least on Optimism, Uniswap is not the number one DEX by total value locked over there. It's Velodrome. Uh,
Yeah.
there's
Right.
and on,
Shout out Velo.
yeah, on BNB,
Those
they
two
were
unicorns.
a Pancake Swap was it? They just recently
Right.
deployed on BNB though, so it's, a little bit
Right.
different. But yeah,
Right.
they're dominant on, mainnet, and a lot of that has to do with concentrated liquidity. They get a majority of like the stablecoin swaps,
Right.
uh, because
And
concentrated liquidity is so good for that.
right. Pancake swap. That brings back
Pancake.
some 2021 memories. Oh God.
But yeah,
That
they
smoke and mirrors type of place.
oh, there's still all sorts of random stuff that gets launched there. But you know what?
Yeah.
You know what concentrated liquidity is not great for though, and that's stable coins. Not stable. It's great for stable coins. What it's not good for is altcoins, where you
Yeah.
want some speculative value with it. You don't care about, very deep liquidity at a certain price point. That's bad.
Right.
What you're looking
Right.
for is, broad liquidity where, you have liquidity all the way down to very low value, very low prices to very high prices, and you can sort of move through that. And that was the Uniswap V1 model, the Uniswap V2 model,
Right.
where you only had the option to provide full range liquidity, and you could,
Yep.
slide through there and have price discovery happen, and that's what you want for your altcoins. Yeah, maybe once you
Right.
get to high cap, then you can, concentrated liquidity starts to make a little bit more sense
More
at
sense.
higher
Yeah.
market
Right.
caps. But at low market caps, geez, you just want full range liquidity, and it
Right.
doesn't matter. And everything with Uniswap v3 was, sort of against that. That's why we still see coins. Where do they launch? They launch on Uniswap v2.
Right,
Some do
right.
v3, but
The preferred place.
so many
Right,
altcoins just rely on v2 liquidity. They deploy on
right.
v2, and that's what
Yep,
they use, and it's because you have full range liquidity there, and that's what
right,
the bazaar is focused on. All liquidity
right,
in the bazaar is full range. Uh,
right.
we're looking at those stablecoin swaps, and we're like, yeah, it's never going to be good for stablecoin swaps. That's not what the bazaar is built
Right.
for.
It's
Uh,
not meant for.
yeah,
Right.
you can go use Uniswap v3, v4, whatever, v5 when that comes out,
Right.
for your stablecoin swaps. That's great and all, but we're really built for altcoins. And yeah, you can probably do some stable swaps on the bazaar, with like orders, but even then the fees are
Right.
going to be higher, just because that's
Right.
our model. So we're not looking to capture, the stablecoin swap market, the
Right.
large, huge cap market. We're looking for those alts who want to start out, provide liquidity, have farming. That's something that
Yep.
throughout all the hooks, I don't know if you can quite do farming on Uniswap yet. But
I didn't see that.
yeah, there is a function. I looked at it a little bit. It was one of the small things they introduced in the update. It was called Donate, where you can
Hmm.
basically immediately give rewards to people in the current tick. I think it's the current tick.
Hmm.
It's active
Yeah.
positions, but I read that as in the tick of the liquidity right now. And
Right.
that does nothing for promoting long-term liquidity. That
Right.
is, if anything, that promotes,
That's a short term.
what was it? Flash liquidity. What this was a thing. Last second liquidity, last minute liquidity. This was a thing where you basically
Yeah.
provide liquidity, for just a single block or something. It sounds like it promotes
Right.
that more than, sustaining liquidity. It promotes, flashing in liquidity only when you need to like capture the
Right.
donate fees if those get used.
If applicable.
It doesn't
Right.
say, hey, stick with us for the long term. Here's the, long thought out, you're going to be provided with rewards over time. It's not doing that. So I think
Right.
even, Uniswap v4 looks great. It's going to be cool. I'm excited to see what gets built. But the Bazaar is very distinct from it, and it's going to have, we're trying to tackle a different market. We're going about it different ways. And, Uniswap v4 doesn't mean, oh, the Bazaar's obsolete. If anything, it's saying, hey, there's room for the Bazaar next to Uniswap v4 here.
Right. Right. They're completely apples and oranges.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's some of what you see in Uniswap v4 is validating the design decisions that have been made for the bazaar for its intended purpose, for basically the number one place to trade altcoins. And so with some of the features, and so yeah, and I just have to say, like, at a time where Chexes are just completely under attack and things like this, and we need to see the deck space push forward. It's nice to see kind of like a big update like this, and to just kind of like reaffirm to the space of like, hey, like decentralization has always been and will always be the answer. And you know what I mean? And just kind of remind people of that fact.
Yeah. Oh,
So I think it's cool to see. I mean, obviously there's Swap Labs, and I'm sure there's kind of some ways that they can. It's not fully trustless and autonomous, but
right.
it's still nice to see Dex infrastructure being built out
Yeah.
in the way that it is.
And that's one of the things that I think we agree with them 100% on here is, you know, the CEXs, they're the ones blowing up. When you're doing things
Right,
behind closed doors and it's not all on chain, that's when
and it's very
there's
opaque.
issues. Yeah. And
Right,
having systems that are fully on chain that exist that are non-upgradable, that was another thing they hit on was, Uniswap v1 is still a protocol. People still use it. Uniswap
Right.
v2 still a protocol. People still use it. It's
Yep.
not like they just took their system and upgraded it. They made sure
Right.
that the system they deployed was immutable, could not be upgraded, and is going to exist forever. And
Right.
that is we feel the same way. The bazaar is going to be that way. We're going to deploy the bazaar. That is going to be how the bazaar works. The bazaar will start out and carry on that way forever.
Yep.
Which is it's a good model. It means that you can trust what they put in there. These we've talked some before on the podcast about upgradable proxies and how
Yeah.
terrible those are. How they can be used to, like the Oasis DAO, they stole the funds from it because it was an upgradable proxy. You don't want the
Right.
upgradable proxies. You want immutable protocols. That is how the space is going to be built. And when you have a new
Right.
version of those, you'll deploy a whole new version of the protocol
Right. You
because
just
that
version
makes
it.
sense. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Agreed. Let me just jump in here. Welcome, friend, to the discussion here in the Hangout. I am inviting everybody who's in here to speak, and so I just invited you as well. So no pressure, but if you want to speak, go ahead and unmute and hang out with us. So, did we have any? Did we have any questions in the AMA, JPN?
I was
Any posted
looking.
questions?
I was looking for any. I actually didn't see.
Anything that's not timeline related, because obviously we can't answer that here.
Yeah, other than timeline, but just talking about anything from the SEC. I don't know. We were able to record late enough this week that I don't know if there's any major updates along that way. Other than I saw
Right.
earlier that CZ did get a criminal defense attorney here within the
Hmm.
past day or two. So that
Gotcha.
doesn't say
U.S.
much.
based? Do you know?
I did not see, but this is a
Gotcha.
pretty obvious move, and it's fine. I'm
Yeah.
sure he's had lawyers on retainer for exactly this
Right. Right.
for a while. This is not some huge development, but it does show that
Right.
this is more than just smoke in the wind. There's going to be a legal battle here. This
Right.
is going to get discussed whether or not it goes to courts or gets settled. Who knows? But
Right.
this is the future of the space is going to get it's going to start to get litigated here, at least a little bit
Yeah.
over the
Right.
next coming months to years, through
And did you see?
individuals
Yeah.
and institutions, Coinbase and Binance
Right.
here.
Yeah. And did you see that a U.S. Congressman, Warren Davidson, I believe he's from Ohio, actually,
Yes, he's in
um,
Ohio.
but he put forth a bill yesterday or proposal to fire Gary Gensler
Fire
and to
Gary.
restructure the SEC leadership to have potentially three Republican members and three Democratic members, so that it is from both sides, and then to have an executive chairman. He put forth that structure, or an executive director, excuse me, and kind of trying to fire back and put some pressure on Chairman Gensler and let him know exactly how he is disrupting innovation and disrupting capital markets and formation, things like that, just by basically by enforcement action and just, acting in whatever capacity that he feels like he has instead of his true authority. We've been talking about this quite a bit over the last couple of days, but, going out there and making statements that have absolutely nothing to do with his purview, about the need for, digital, you know, digital money and things like that, that should have, no business coming out of an SEC commissioner's mouth, things like that, right? Opining on things like that. It doesn't look like it's going to be a bipartisan effort. It looks like this was just sponsored by Warren Davidson at this time. And
Yeah.
again, we see this troubling trend here in the U.S. where, it's quickly that, the crypto issue is quickly being divided amongst the different partisan
Yeah. It's
you
become a
know,
partisan issue. Yeah.
it's, yeah, become a partisan issue, you know, at least on the level of, you know, Congress. When it comes to actual, you know, citizens and voters, I mean, that remains to be seen.
Right.
You know, and we'll see how much that becomes an actual election issue. I mean, this upcoming election in 2024, I think, is kind of a litmus test right now, because I believe I've seen something like, you know, 1 in 9 Americans own cryptocurrency or something like
Yeah.
that.
1 in 9, one in
And,
10,
you know,
somewhere in there. Yeah.
it's somewhere like that, and somewhere like 40 to 50% of those people feel very strongly about crypto and um, you know, ability to hold crypto and to hold, you know, non-governmental money, things like that. So, you know, doing some, you know, some quick math, right? I don't know how many people voted in the last election. I think it was like 90 million or something like that,
Yeah. It was a
right?
good chunk.
It was a good chunk, right? But if you say 1 in 10, so you know, 10%, so 9 million, and then if 50% of those people, right, so 4.5 million people, right, feel strongly, and you know, you're getting big moves from one party, you know, against that. I mean, that's 4.5 million people.
Yeah.
That's enough to, you know,
Depending on
cause some serious noise and maybe swing an election,
depending
you
on
know,
where they're
depending on how they feel
located,
and how they
yeah,
vote.
yeah. Where depending
Right,
on where they're
right,
located, because that's a whole thing about the U.S.
right.
political system we won't even dive
Yeah,
into.
right. Right, right.
But the other thing
Right. But
that,
I mean,
yeah, like,
that's really interesting, you
hmm
know, 4.5 million people. I mean, if, you know, if they decide to make it an election issue, if there are people out there like me, where, you know, I am
single issue
100%
voter.
through and through a single issue voter, you know, then we're going to see that, you know, whether this strategy is going to pay off or not. Of course, you know, being, you know, U.S. citizen, I would love to see some more, you know, bipartisanship around the issue of crypto, because, you know, it's a fantastic technology, and it's sad to see that, you know, places like, you know, I saw Coinbase was invited to, you know, apply for licensure in Hong Kong and things like that
Yep, I
late
saw that.
last week, and it's sad to see, you know, the exodus of the technology, because it's becoming a partisan issue, and because they don't want to build any regulation around it because government is deadlocked.
Yeah. Well, and I think the
So
other thing that Gary had said when he was going out on his TV interviews here was
yeah,
that you can buy 16,000 different cryptos through Coinbase wallet, which
hmm.
this was mentioned in the lawsuit too. It made it seem like Coinbase wallet, a standalone wallet that you can connect to dexes to, was some sort of agreement between Coinbase and users as a securities exchange platform, which is just, if we get to a
That's
point where
preposterous.
wallets are, classified this way and can be viewed as that, no one can offer wallets anymore without being licensed
Right,
as an exchange, which is,
right,
I don't know if that'll ever happen.
right,
So
right.
it that was something that people sort of called out in the one lawsuit as being absolutely ridiculous, and him going out on TV and spreading these, things that make it, the way he phrases it makes it seem like Coinbase is offering, just absolute
Right.
tons of
Because
coins.
they offer an Ethereum based wallet that can literally
Yeah,
hold anything that, you
that
know,
can
is
be
on each
connected to
blockchain.
dexes, and you can trade any of the
Right,
tokens on the decks. It just, it's such bad faith there, trying to
right,
attack it in that angle without being like, well, these are self custody things. They don't seem to have that mindset of, oh, this is, a piece of software,
right,
a tool
right.
for self custody, as opposed to, a part of an exchange platform. So that's one that I really
Right.
hope gets shot down and nuked in this lawsuit, because
Yeah.
there'll be no crypto in the U.S. if you start making wallets, securities
Right.
platforms. That's
Yep.
ridiculous. And
And yeah, and I saw that there was some news yesterday as well. Caitlin Long, you know, they started a crypto bank in Wyoming a couple of years ago, and part of this whole Operation Choke Point 2.0 was that they had their application for banking by the Federal Reserve rejected in January of this year, and there was an investigation started either yesterday or the end of last week of whether that could have been illegal and part of this Operation Choke Point 2.0, and
Oh,
whether that
really?
could have been unconstitutional. And they were offering parity for at like one-to-one legit backing, which is not even something banks do, right? I mean, my God, there's so much leverage that banks use, and right, and so they were, the Federal Reserve basically said like, this is not like, a banking model that will work for us, or like this is not a standardized banking model to hold assets one to one and to have
No.
full reserves. Not good enough. like could you be any more like ridiculous and hypocritical, right? But that's just unfortunately, the stuff that you read. And of course, the Board of Governors, for the Federal Reserve System. I mean, they have, you know, um, they have every incentive to try and, kill the crypto technology. And, you can't put the cat back in the bag, but at least to delay it or to push it overseas so they can introduce, their CBDC that they're, 10 years late on and things like that. And so, the
We'll see
sad part
when.
is crypto will endure,
Yep.
and it's going to be, right. It's the future of finance. But the sad part will be is if, it gets pushed out of the U.S. and then in 10 years from now, it will come back to the U.S., but it will only be corporations who, are able to participate in things like this because of, unjust, rules and things like that, and laws that are being, legislated. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, and
yep.
and we will see, but there's aspects of this that are sort of outside of the scope of the non-nation, because the non-nation, we're a protocol on Ethereum.
Right.
We're offering the ability to build great stuff on Ethereum,
Right.
that is, effective, fully and truly decentralized to the point where it can't be stopped
Right.
legislatively. There's other ways,
Right.
on ramps and off ramps. That's not really something we're with. Maybe through partners you could build good on chain
Right.
infrastructure for that, but a lot of that exists off chain. Wallets are, again, those are like off chain types of software that are necessary to interact, but it is
Right.
not really something that you can just build exclusively on Ethereum. It's sort of an access layer, and maybe
Yep.
you get you can push some of the infrastructure to the blockchain and do some of that, but really we're here for the the legal side of things, where, okay, if you launch a protocol and you're a developer and you have special powers within that ecosystem to unilaterally push a change, you're in a position of power, which puts you in a legal
Hmm.
responsibility. And
Right.
we offer the tools to change that, to
Right.
not take away the power, but let
Elim.
you give up that special power
Right.
to token
Right.
holders in a way where the responsibility for action and the responsibility for other things are not on you in a way that makes
Yep.
you vulnerable, honestly, because,
Right.
and we've talked about it some,
Right.
if,
Those concerns are completely
yeah,
neutralized.
if you have the ability to take money out of a pool, or out of a multi-sig or something, as a protocol founder, and somebody comes at you with a $5 wrench, what are you going to do?
Right. Right. Exactly.
If you have the ability,
Yep.
someone will try to exploit it, whether it's a person or a government or an institution. We offer a
Yep.
way where you can turn that over and make things decentralized. Uh,
Right.
and we're offering very powerful tools to be able to do that and focus on the aspects that you want to develop, instead of having to worry
Yep.
about some of the nitpicky things that you might spend 6 months of R&D on to publish something that is a
Right.
near identical clone of something that already exists, like farming. If you want to have
Right.
farming,
Right.
well, you know
Boom. Plug and play.
prior to our contracts, you had to, develop that. And, oh, maybe you drop, 10 grand in a month of time and get something that was deployed that you weren't certain was safe, but it was the only way to get it published. Now we have clonable farming contracts, and soon we'll have the bazaar. You can just have
Yep.
farming however you want, whenever you want, so easily. And that's what we're trying to offer. That's part of the value proposition here is not only can you have, a nice decentralized protocol where the power is with token holders, you can also have a bunch of tools to make your development process easier, to build something, the unique aspect of a protocol rather than the everyone has to make, a farming contract. Oh, everyone has to figure out how to do routines. Everyone has to figure out a voting system. It's like, no, just clone this here.
We've done all that for you. Right. Why continue reinventing the wheel?
Yeah.
Right. Use the wheel as it is. The perfect wheel, by the way, is an amazing wheel. And then build your innovation on top of that.
Yeah.
Add your secret sauce. You know what I mean? Yeah, 100%. It's, and when the non-nation is released, I mean, people are really going to grasp the power of it all. And that's not to say that, even though, right, these, regulators are claiming centralization concerns, I fully expect that they will continue to move the goalpost, right? Afterwards, even it'll be something else, right? But in order to, remove that, counterparty risk and centralization risk, because, that is how the technology should operate. We are providing these tools. And it's going to be a paradigm shift. It will be the new standard.
Yeah.
And people will understand fully. So,
yeah. And we've seen the on-chain mechanisms be better, like during the not Terra Luna itself, but during the Terra Luna, unwinding that was happening, we saw, on-chain liquidations happen perfectly fine. A lot of protocols had those. They were very visible. People knew when things were going to get liquidated. They got liquidated just fine.
Yep.
And it all happened on chain. And then you had other players in the space like Three Arrows Capital, who happened to be deep underwater, were not really, transparent about where their liquidations prices were, how much they had things, how leveraged they were. And then they collapse sort of behind closed doors, and everyone wonders what happens and why that nuked the market. Well, if these had been on chain, they would have been very visible. People would have seen them. They could have been predicted. They could have been handled automatically. And we see this time and time again. These sort of things are why Web3 and everything being, open and transparent here matters.
Yeah.
And how it's a better system. And we welcome people to come build on that system. Come build on this system. Come use this system. It's better. It's a better way to do things. And we just got to hope that, at some point the government gets on board with that, hey, these really are good systems. They have a good use case. Let's foster that. We'll weed out the scams, but let's utilize the good parts here for what they're really good at.
The worst case, the worst way that this could happen is that, the technology or the regulation for the technology is just on this giant 4-year teeter-totter, right? Where everything just stops dead in its tracks, and then a bunch of progress is made after 4 years, and then goes back the other way. And, it's this, hallmark partisan issue, something like this. So let's hope that we don't see that. And yeah, great way to sum it up about non-nation. I couldn't have said it any better myself. And like we talked about, right? This is really going to be an eye-opener for people, and they're going to understand, this is why Web3 exists, and this is the path forward. It's going to be paradigm shifting. So
we'll clip it for a short here. Don't worry.
Yep, for sure. Sounds good. All right. Well, we are about 35 minutes in. Thank you to all who have joined us. Are there any final questions? Does anybody want to speak or come up and hang out before we wrap up here? Friend Tate, non-lete.
Covered a lot about Uniswap here. The new Uniswap, how that's going to compare to the Bazaar. Talking about a little bit more about the SEC, lawsuits coming out, and how non-nations, fighting against this over-regulation that seems to be coming in the space. How we're offering the tools to make real decentralized things that have power and utility in the space.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
just like Uniswap, come build on the non-nation,
Yeah. And seeing is believing, and when the platform is released, oh man, it's gonna have some heavy use. Is my prediction. Some very very heavy use, and it's gonna be a sight to see. All right. Well, I guess we will go ahead and get this wrapped up then. So, thank you to all who joined for coming to the Non-Viral Weekly AMA and Hangout. And as always, every Tuesday, we'll be here hanging out and taking questions and discussing current events and how Non Nation is solving problems for builders and participants in the space. So, thank you to everyone for joining, and we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Have a good day, everyone.
Have a good one.